this apocalypse in my life that kind of forced me to look within my own psyche, and that was the initiation of my journey to higher awareness, to ask myself, how do I operate and what is going on in the world? So I've had some incredible mentors and teachers that have, given me aid and assistance along my journey. And, in 2019, it was time to activate and get on the battlefield and get my voice and face out there. And here we are. And also a, content creator on the One Great Work Network, which I'm very proud of, to be a part with all of those creators and members, and you, Vinny, as well. So it's great to be on here.
Well, I want to talk about mentorship for a bit, because there's a lot of people who are new on the scene, and generally speaking, when somebody comes into this movement, it's because they've reached a certain age where they've found out the world is a lie after living a lie for a significant period of decades, right? And many of the movement are much older in years, and I seem to be one of the youngest to have been doing this for quite so long. And the reason why I've been able to do that is because I actively sought out mentorship from the best of the best, and continue my show. And many of their cases, I'm the last person to have interviewed them alive. So there's something about the elders around the campfire in ancient times telling the children stories that really resonated with me. And I see a lot of people come in this movement and a lot of people go. The ones who come and stay are those who seek out the knowledge of mentors, because learning this all the hard way by yourself for the first time ever, you don't have to do it, guys. All right? There's people out there who've been doing this a very, very long time, and they will jump at the opportunity for anybody who wants to actually listen to them and learn and try to do the work in earnest. What do you feel about that?
I agree 100%. And I like to make the delineation from mentor to a leader, right? A leader is someone that is walking their own path, and they accumulate followers, but they are going to lead you on their path, right? We need to lead ourselves. A mentor is different. The actual word, the etymology, it really means a stepping stone, an uplifting to a next level, right? So that's what a mentor is. And I think as individuals, we need mentors to level up, to gain the experience as way showers. And that can be in many categories. I have mentors when it comes to gardening and herbalism, and then I have my tech mentors and even marketing mentors as well. So those are people that are doing it very effective. I can learn from them to increase my efficiency and effectiveness. And, we learn, we take what we need, and then we move on to another mentor as well. I think mentorship is huge in just a healthy culture as well. I mean, we look at what the mentors are now in pop culture, and they're, the lowest of the low type of people with the celebrities. These are young kids, and adolescents and teens are looking up to those type of people. No wonder there's so much mental illness and so much misdirection in the world. So especially in that coming of age years where, many indigenous cultures, mentorship was, very prevalent in those cultures. And we need to go back. We need to go back to that time period. And I don't even look at it as going back. It's evolving in alignment with nature, with natural systems. And mentorship, 100%, is something that needs to be integrated.
When we talk about this and we talk about the real effects of it, interesting term using the word effects here, considering the example I'm about to give. Stan Winston, the creature and special effects master who did Terminator 2, Aliens, and Jurassic Park. park, right? This is stuff in the mid-'80s, early '90s, and had such convincing effects that they stand out and are still convincing to this day, even with the huge amount of technology. And Stan Winston died, like many would say, just before his time, around about the time he started educating and mentoring Tom Woodruff Jr. and Alec Gillis, who started this firm called Amalgamated Dynamics. But if you look at the films today versus that back then, the creature effects are not as effective. Despite the fact that we've advanced in technology, we've advanced in understanding, we've advanced in viewership, so on and so forth, the actual skill to be able to do something convincingly did not get passed on. And this gave me the thought that it is absolutely paramount for everybody who knows how to do stuff that nobody else knows how to do, to pass that frickin' knowledge on, man, because after you're gone, it's gone, and it may take many, many generations for another genius of that ilk to come in and be able to do something to a similar level. And I feel the truth movement is missing out on that greatly. There are so many people who could be teaching others inordinate and extraordinary amounts with their skills that they uniquely possess, and they are not, or they are perpetually frustrated, or there simply isn't the interest to try and do the work, to learn these very difficult things from these people.
Yes, I agree with that. The care is not there. There's a lot of distortion in the truth and freedom community, the truth community, quote unquote, right? People get stuck in that black pill mentality where they have information deprivation. They're just going after one rabbit hole after another and after another. And, seeking truth, that's great. But the process of education and learning is obviously the trivium. You gather all your resources in a given category or field. You process that and understand it, and then you put it out into the world and you teach that. You teach your conclusion, your findings, which thus that creates more grammar for other people to take in. And that's the scientific process. And so without that, the mentorship and that process of putting out your findings in a concise way, it's like what Mark Passio, when he talks about modern literacy, how do we put out our findings and our conclusions and that rhetoric efficiently, right, to this incredible platform that we have as the internet, which is a neutral tool depending on how one wants to use it, and computers and publishing, programming and stuff. It's a big opportunity, but a lot of people in the truth community are they're falling short of that. And I would say a lot of ego as well. A lot of people, they don't want to admit they need a mentor, yet alone subscribe to a mentor, right?
I was thinking about that. The term ego seems to be very much overused lately. My understanding was that it meant a sense of self, right? So yes. Somebody who's incredibly confident, like myself, could come across as arrogant to somebody who's ignorant. You see, that's one of the interesting dynamics between it. So if you're able to manage your sense of self to the point where you're capable of looking at it, like I forget the scientific term for it, but there was this guy who went and robbed a couple of banks in broad daylight this one time, and he was surprised, like he was absolutely shocked that he got busted. Right, the cops turned up to his door and the bus, and he was like, "But I wore the juice." And he had believed, you know how you get like invisible ink, right, with lemon juice and stuff like that? He actually believed with all his heart that if he covered his face in lemon juice, it would fool the cameras, that they wouldn't be able to get a picture of his face. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, And what they found was that people who are very educated and know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to most things will have come to a point of their knowledge where they have actually seen the great precipice of where their knowledge ends and how much more there is to know. And so they are decidedly less confident in their conclusions when it comes to thinking. Whereas people who have only just watched a single YouTube video about a thing and now fully believe it with all their heart will be so much more confident in their answers, even though they are wrong, right? It's that great chasm. So the key here is to be somewhere in the middle of that perception, which is accurate appraisal of one's own abilities, right? No, you're not overconfident and you're not underconfident. You are capable of perceiving and receiving advice and criticism in equal measure, so that your quote-unquote ego doesn't get out of control as many do. And this also dovetails into the whole concept now that people are dealing with on a daily basis in their relationships and work and friends and things of that nature, which is personality disorders, things like bipolar or what's it called, borderline personality disorder, narcissism, psychopathy, and what was his name? Dr. Sam Vaknin. He said that these disorders do make the individual superior to ordinary people, in the point of the fact that they have no ego restraint. Somebody without the ability to look at criticism, without the ability to do away with their delusional self-image, can actually get a lot done in this society, because our society has been dumbed down and we are very separate from each other, so therefore you don't have essentially the old school social consequences that would once happen when you did something wrong in the tribe. Back in the day, you'd get kicked out of the tribe. One person alone by themselves in the wilderness is dead. All right? Mm-hmm. And that's why people fear public speaking in their very being. It's actually the world's biggest fear is public speaking, because of that dynamic. And because people aren't not having the direct consequences of that, it's allowed the prevalence of these personalities disorders to run rampant.
Man, you touched on some fantastic points. Yeah. Having a runaway ego or being ego dominant, that's one issue. And then having a lack of ego is just as, on the opposite polarity. That's also an imbalance. Like you said, the sense of self, that's what the ego is. To be able to apply introspection and analyze your own thoughts, emotions, and actions, you need to eat the ego to assist you in that. So, I agree with you 100%. This is what healthy teachability is. Everyone has the potential of being the teacher and the student. You need to know what you know and what you don't know, and delineate, belief and dogma from actual facts. And this is, a huge problem in the truth community, because you could ask any truther and they'll tell you, oh, I know exactly what's going on. But that's the point. Everyone has the answer. No, this is exactly what's going on. But there is a correct answer in any given question or a category, and that's why it is also so important to activate and put your findings out there. The problem, the roadblock, is that healthy ego. Either they're too good to do it, they don't care, why bother, humanity's not going to change, or they're scared to death of being on camera. There's so many issues. They all go kind of hand in hand, and I would love to see that change.
I remember, reminds me of what Jamie McNichol told me. He got a show with Rolling Stone in Sydney, Australia, where he get like 60,000 listeners, and he was kind of nervous, and his producer said to him something I'm never going to forget. In this business, you're going to have a lot of people who want to become your critics. Don't become one of them. There's too many people who are too hard on themselves, and I like to remind the listeners, look, guys, look at what you've been through. All right, just objectively, look at what people have done to you during the course of your life. Look at what has been taken from you, all right, and look at what you've survived. That is not a small issue. These are the building blocks of your life and your sense of self. In the course of that, you haven't lost your intelligence, you haven't lost your care, you haven't lost your sense of humor, and you haven't lost your sense of morality. That is a good thing that is very rare and very valuable, and sometimes you need to just give yourself a pat on the back and give yourself some freaking credit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, people, when they hear the word pride, majority of people cringe, right? And it's the same thing with anger, like righteous anger as well. They cringe to that. They want to eradicate these certain emotions. Every emotion that we have has value in any given context if it's applied, correctly. But, people that are content creators, Vinny, you, myself, and many other, I mean, we bust our butt. There's so much blood, sweat, and tears and resources that gets invested in our content. Some of the most people that I've experienced resistance from are quote unquote truthers, right? The supposedly people that should be my peers, the ones that question and that are truly open-minded, they're the ones that are the hardest critics, that push back. And it's not even really like they disagree. It's the fundamentals of having a dialogue, a back and forth. They just want to projectile vomit onto your post, your content, and then just, carry on. I always engage healthy, pushback and questioning in my work. But you have to be selective on where you invest your energy, because there's absolutely a lot of vampires out there and a lot of, wounded people across the board, truther or not.
Yeah. And they can be dangerous and unpredictable. And ultimately, there's a lot of cult leaders in varying forms within the truth movement as well. It's a psychopath. He has a hierarchy. He tells everybody to work really hard. He gets them to sign on a dotted line agreeing that they want the prize. There's a central authority. There's a central doctrine. And you're supposed to henpeck and abuse everybody who doesn't get it. That kind of thing. That's cult indoctrination. Okay? Yes. It happens all the freaking time. And psychology today says that internet trolls are narcissists, sadists, and psychopaths. The craving of their attention that they're trying to give to people is essentially attempting to get the attention from people. They give you attention so that they can solicit attention from you. If they tell you a mean comment that hurts your feelings, and then you reply, indicating that your feelings have been hurt, they enjoy that because you're giving them your energy. You're giving them your time and your attention, which are those two spiritual currencies that these vampires like to suckle upon. And also, on the case where you are absorbing... Oh, man, it happened to me, bro. It happened to me the first 6 months where I quit my job and was just doing this absolutely full-time. I was watching between 2 and 3 documentaries a day and between 3 and 6 hours of podcasts and radio shows, all right? My life was conspiracy and only conspiracy. Vinny, were you talking to anybody else about it? No. Were you going out and having parties and maintaining your social skills and your ability to communicate with people that were different from you? No. All right. Were you able to talk about anything normal? No. All right. So if your wife asks you what kind of pancakes do you want? Do you want blueberry or buttermilk? And you say, not everyone's an inside job. All right. So you get yourself into this schism, all right, and you box yourself in with all this information that is very difficult to comprehend in the first place because of its complexity, but it's difficult to process in the second place because of its emotional instigations that it has upon you. If you are in a straight up fear paradox, right, you're too afraid to act, but you're too afraid to not act, and you get rendered inert. Right? That's what happens to some people. And then they start to break out of that and they try to comment. And I have this all the time, Will, all the time. Somebody whose first comment to me is a freaking essay that is not addressed to me. Right? They're not actually trying to communicate with me. They're just trying to spew all of their current understandings. And it would take me significant time to pour through the amount of points that they've brought up, let alone point out which ones are incorrect in my view, and which ones are, yep, bro, you've hit the nail on the head. That's not my responsibility to help everybody with their trauma one-on-one. All right, I'm not being paid to do it. And I was thinking about it the other day. Is like, you know how Mark says that all cops are bad people, and it's like they get off on it. They're adrenaline junkies, just like internet trolls are, and they love to hurt and be violent and do these kind of things. And even if they're the quote-unquote good cops, they just allow the bad cops to do what they do and then look the other way. And that's what's happening in the truth movement to a large degree. I think that we are not holding our own people with the same level of accountability and righteousness as we do the actual prefabricated, identified enemies of mankind. We are, I think, have created a truth movement collective ego that is delusional in nature and refuses to see itself for what it really is.
Yes, well said. Agree 100%. You know, the silver lining of just, social media in general, it's an artificial reality, because 90% of the stuff that people are saying to other people, they most likely wouldn't say face to face in the natural world. So you have this facade where it's easy to just vomit on the keyboard and type whatever, even though in the natural world, face to face, eye to eye interactions would be different. I think, the COVID pandemic had a lot to do with that, to kind of seal the deal and, hammer the nail in the coffin, where, a lot of people are invoking their inner narcissist. And I know that word gets thrown around, but it's the tendencies that people are invoking and projecting out. And, there's some fundamental questions that people just need to ask themselves if they're going down these rabbit holes and they're spending hours and days and weeks upon a time on the information that they're taking in, right? Is it true? Is it moral? And is it useful? Now, sure, seeking truth is the process of truth discovery, but you could still ask yourselves, is it moral? Or a big one, is it useful? Right? So there's so much information out there where the body of content, it's not applicable in the real world, in nature. You can't do anything with it. It's just mental masturbation, in intellectual, gymnastics, and we are fighting a war. So information that is useful and that can shift the dynamics of the current human condition is important. Like that's the pathway that we really need to be in if someone really truly cares about creating change.
Creating change. There's a word in New Zealand Māori called kaupapa, and it doesn't mean that you've got two dads, but it's more or less like an ancient phraseology that there's no word in English for it. at least for people who aren't part of the truth movement, the word kaupapa really means the great work. Okay, and this is something I was thinking about before we started the show. I was just thinking in my own head, but now it's come up, so I have to say it, is that there are too many people who do not do the work, okay, and they want to be at point X, but they're currently at point A, and they've got a whole alphabet of things to go through before they can get to X. And they feel, because it's such a long journey, that it's not worth starting, or if they do start and they realise the error of their ways, that they wanted an easy life and this is not the way to do it, and then they give up. And it's that old saying, is there two mistakes on the path to enlightenment: not to begin and not to finish. And I'd like to go back to what you were saying before, and this is how people in the occult have conversations. I noticed this when I had Mark Passio and Curtis the Illuminated One and Freeman Fly on the same show, is that they listen to what each other says and then they reply to what they've said. They bring up these points. And you brought up the point of having knowledge that is useful. And I've got 4 things to say to that. Q, Trump, Flat Earth, Mandela Effect. Okay? I've had countless conversations with truthers about these 4 individual topics. One says trust the plan, one says build the wall, one says the earth is flat, and the other says that history gets rewritten all the time, and it's really weird. Right? Okay, now, which of those is useful to know, right? How do you
exactly?
How do you apply that knowledge? You can't. So this has come to a term that I discovered called thought cancellation. You can literally phrase things in such a way that it limits the brain's ability to think or process those things. And what you're saying before about is that knowledge useful? That's a very important one. And I've only just identified, because of you saying that, what these things actually there are designed to do, to prevent people from being useful members of the truth movement.
Exactly. You nailed it, brother. 100%. And that's what true wisdom is, right? Wisdom is knowledge applied. It's action that is useful, that is moral, striving for true as well. So yeah, man, it's those 4 categories that you mentioned are some of the biggest circles of dross. Even when I get the question of...
I'm sorry. Define dross?
Misdirection, friction in the flow of something, right? It's completely irrelevant, and it stutters and limits and retards someone's progress. So, and these categories of like philosophy and morality, this is why they're so important, because they function at that base operating level where, like you were talking about, filtering information. When you have the knowledge of morality, ethics, the trivium on how to think, that means all the information that you are coming across is getting filtered through those fundamental, foundational processes, right? So you can go through the 3 staves of, like what Socrates says, the true, moral, and useful. And then you can make that choice, that free will choice, if you're going to invest your time and, your spiritual currency into something like that. So yeah, man, fantastic points you brought up.
This also reminds me of how difficult it was to learn this kind of information for as an adult. Okay, so the fundamental problem is that children are not being raised to learn this. Back in the day, in the late 1800s, children were educated before the admission of public schooling systems, and they were educated with the trivium. This is something that was taught to what is now, technically in our day and age, ancient peoples. And the ability to work things out, the ability to question authority has basically died out to a large degree, to the point where I realized yesterday that I am somebody who is not going to get on or be understood or be liked by approximately 98% of people, right? And somebody told me that I was being really negative about it. And I go, no, it's not. Okay? Think of the best 2% of people. Okay, that's close to a couple of 100 million people who are intelligent, creative, moral, and have skills and quality, right? That is the thing that is worth my time. The people who do not embody those particular items are not worth my effing time. They are literally a waste of it. And I've only just started to realize this now that I've turned 40, that I actually really do have limited time, and I can't afford to waste it on people who are simply not worth it. As Passio talked about the four horsemen of the apocalypse: ignorance, laziness, cowardice, apathy. These are the fundamental principles by which the vast majority of the population now currently live their lives, and in so doing, they are the very cause of the apocalypse, and I don't want to be part of it.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And you nailed it when you talked about the schooling system, and that's really, the root of where a lot of these lack of capabilities come from. I mean, it really stems from parenting itself. I talk about conscious parenting and techniques and the importance of parenting itself, or stewardship is what I like to refer to it as. Most people understand when you say parenting. But that is obviously, I mean, when we are born, the family dynamic is that first structure of existence for a child in the formative years. That's what they are going to know. And the operating system, how they interact, traumas, everything is dependent on those first few years. And I'm 44. There was kindergarten when I was young, but now there's daycare and like pre-daycare. So it's getting younger and younger. The indoctrination system is getting more diluted and incorrect as it's going, with something like Common Core, where the answer itself doesn't matter. It's just doing what you are told and showing multiple formulas. And so the effect of that is dimming and dampening that critical thinking and that sense of self, of that someone can discover truth or knowledge on their own, not to mention the willpower to do it, right? Nowadays, everyone gets a trophy. Everyone's a winner. That's not a healthy dynamic. So especially for like men, like there's that competitive aspect where we want to do better. It's that physical fire that drives us. And if everyone gets a trophy, that willpower is going to be diminished, especially at a young age.
Yeah, and women are attracted to men who have that drive. Who are working on themselves, who are working on things, who have big ideas and go really hard at them and believe in themselves and have confidence, that kind of thing. And this is how those bloodlines essentially survive. And there's a film called Mortal Engines that was filmed here in New Zealand, and it's basically this dynamic is not only all throughout Hollywood, but it's permeated throughout society. You have a very strong, one might say, bitchy woman who is the protagonist, and you have a very weak, one might call them a pussy, male who's really attracted to this bitch. Am I
I'm so
here?
glad we can cuss on this program. I forgot to ask you. Sorry, continue.
I mean, perhaps we can, perhaps we can't. I mean, I remember the other day, what was it? I was on an American show and I said the F word, and a woman told me, well, on this broadcast, we speak the Queen's English. And I go, well, didn't you guys fight a revolutionary war so that you didn't have to obey the dictates of the crown? I'm just saying, it's one of the fundamental makeups of your country. So that's what I find very disheartening, is that whatever examples you put in front of people, that is what they'll start to emulate. And the Greeks had a saying about parenting, that it is a woman's job to take care of the children when the children cannot take care of themselves. And it is a father's job to teach the children how to take care of themselves once they're able. And if you look around, I assume, I don't know, haven't done the research, but I assume that lots of people don't know how to cook, don't know how to clean, don't know how to create a business, don't know how to make a prototype or a product, don't know how to sell that prototype or product, and don't know how to run a household effectively so that it's working in harmony with the communication, so that people's fundamental needs are met and any problems within that dynamic are addressed and solved effectively. Right? These seem to be the very basic pillars of what a human being needs to have their ducks in a row from the get-go. Otherwise, they are always going to be somebody else's freaking slave.
Absolutely. You know, growing up, there was, I think it was middle school, we had to do 2 years of, it was called home ec. It was home economics. And they taught cooking, how to do laundry, how to balance a checkbook, entrepreneurship, sewing, woodworking, all these basic things, right? And for 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds, they got rid of that a long time ago. I don't even think they have those type of classes in public school, even though I am an advocate for unschooling. So take your kids out of public school and teach them yourselves, or inspire them and work with them yourselves. Yeah, man, it's disheartening. I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and the situation is not getting any better. It's always in a process of movement, but I see it spiraling down in very interesting ways, especially as technology increases, physical technology. Sorry, I got my chicken in the way. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's now more than ever, people need to consider the idea that we started this conversation with mentors, and get some mentors in many aspects of your life and put the behavior in action, start that process of the internal work, figure out why you are not doing certain things, what triggers you and why. And the magic pill type of culture nowadays, where, like you were saying, we want to go from A to Z. We don't want to hit all the steps and have that process of, or that rites of passage and initiation, that what life is all about. We're going to go through those regardless. You're either going to be aware and participate, or you're going to be someone's bitch, and someone's going to take advantage of you and impose their control and their will on you, which is what is going on nowadays, for sure.
Yeah, I think when I was in university, I met kids who couldn't make toast. They couldn't make 2-minute noodles. And I'm like, what are you studying? Oh, I'm studying law. Guys, so you're the one that people are going to be looking up to. Yeah. And you can't even make them breakfast. No.
Well, everybody wants to be an influencer or a podcaster, and it's like diluting that category of education. Cat videos or teabagging your brother, those go viral. It just shows you where people, their care is at, the populace, right? What they want. And The Romans will give the bread and circuses for sure. They'll keep that going at all costs.
Yeah, the interplay between men and women, as I see it today, has basically been destroyed. And I noticed that you got a copy of the Kama Sutra there on your thing. And I remember a kid who was very, very tall. He's taller than me. I'm 6'6", and he's actually a basketball player, right? And of course, when you're tall, everybody asks you if you play basketball. And my cousin Patrick, he was I think maybe nearly half a foot taller than me, like near on 7 foot. And this chick comes up to him at a bar and she goes, "Whoa, you're really tall. Do you play basketball?" He looked down and he goes, "No. Do you play mini golf?" And this guy asked me, he's like, "Oh, bro, I don't know why he asked me." Right? Maybe because I was the only other really tall guy there. But he says, "There's this girl over there that I really want to get into. What do you reckon I should do?" And I was like, first thing is that orgasm is psychological. Okay? If she's worried about anything in any way, if you haven't thought of anything that she might have thought of and nipped it at the bud beforehand to make sure that she's completely comfortable and completely free, your sexual experience is going to be somewhat lessened. All right? Your job and your responsibility is to maintain your confidence and your preparedness for these special encounters so that love can actually happen. It can actually bloom, and she can feel relaxed and safe and loved. And
100%.
Saw him the next day. I was like, "Well, how did it happen?" He's like, "Yeah, boy, I do." I was like, "Hey, good on you, son." but this sort of stuff has been diluted by the prevalence of pornography. Like even since the inception of the internet, if I may use a double entendre, pornography has been basically the number one use for it because people do it in private. They don't necessarily show other people it. And I've noticed through the years that the internet has been around how culture has changed and sexuality has changed, and the way that men and women interact and what they expect from each other has changed with it as well. So nowadays there are sex clubs, polyamorous relationships are the thing, and what have you. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this whole dynamic of I guess I would call it sexual pollution of loveless copulating?
Yes, it's a huge tactic of the social engineers on all categories, especially sexuality and and gender and men and women, right? It's the inversion principle. They want to invert truth, invert the natural world, where there are inherent objective qualities and attributes of energy and consciousness that are different from men and women, and that information can be inverted and create confusion, right? And a confused mind is going to act incorrect or not act at all, and this is the state that they want to keep people in. So I mean, just look at the whole gender divide. If you can separate and if you can incite division between men and women, that's 50% of the population. You just need to mind control one side, even though they're hitting it with both angles, right? The chemical warfare on men and women, but especially towards men with, testosterone and the microplastics, radiation. You can go down the whole list, but this does have an effect on testosterone, which is the fire element. It's the generator of willpower and care within a man. And women have levels of testosterone as well, but they're affected differently, emotionally and mentally, mind controlled. And if you can divide that population, then everyone has strayed so far from the path of being in harmony with nature and with truth, which is. It creates a ripple effect, big time, where the people nowadays, or the adults, when they do have kids, they are participating in that generational mind control. So our parents, our grandparents, the mind control was different, and it was passed down. So the mind control is evolving. This is what I mean by in the aggregate human condition, we are still devolving, right? It's through that advanced mind control. Sexuality, the gender divide is a huge, huge part of that, because it's also population control as well. We're talking about epigenetics and eugenics as well. So it's influencing men and women on their likes and their needs so that they breed a certain way or don't breed at all.
And this is coming down to the fundamentals between the early modern England manner of how countries were run, which is basically from the family unit. All right, there was this family unit, man at the head of the household, woman runs the household, that kind of thing. Man makes 80% of the money, woman spends it. You know, I mean, and people were apparently not suffering from depression overwhelmingly like they are today, not committing suicide overwhelmingly, not developing strenuous personality disorders, or perhaps we're not actually accurately capable of recording those things back in the day, and these are not just modern phenomenon. My thoughts is that it is a recurring phenomenon, that certain points throughout history, the same fundamental principles of governance, which is controlling people's minds, have swung back and forth between freedom and tyranny. And subsequently, as the tyranny becomes more prevalent, the society degrades and all of its varying qualities. And that is what we see is a revolving cycle of things getting worse and then wiping themselves out, and then things getting better, and then becoming corrupted and starting the whole cycle again, like that old saying that from bad times come good men. Good men create hard times, and hard times create weak... Oh, sorry, the opposite way round, rather. Good times create weak men, and good men create good times, sort of thing. And we go through this cycle here, and I see it very similarly to how politics is running on a global scale. So we would have the United States leftist candidate, let's say it was, I don't know, Clinton, for example, in the 90s, and people getting sick of that leftist mentality, and then voting for George W. Bush as though that would make it better, and then getting sick of him so much, and then hearing the promises that all the drone strikes are going to end and the illegal wiretapping is going to end from Obama, and then so you vote for him, and then that kind of thing eventually falls down, and now there's a guy who wants to build a wall, right, and so on and so forth. Is pressure release, pressure release, pressure release. Perhaps it's a sophisticated methodology of social engineering that is predicated on the public's ability to forget how things were, so that scams can be run on a significantly scheduled basis with a effectiveness that most people will not wake up to before it is too late, right? These people are very good at what they do, but what they do isn't very good.
That's right, man. Yeah, excellent points. I would say there's a lot of a trauma response as well, right? Like so we have this cyclical aspect of events. You could look at, a world war where the majority of men go off to the war, and there's a trauma response from disrupting physically, mentally, emotionally, disrupting society. It's this polarization, swinging from one extreme to another. Like you're talking about, the liberal category used to be what the Republicans were, and now it's completely changed. It's all about pattern recognition, and people don't have this larger systems analysis to observe swaths of time and events and see what the trauma response is, the effect of certain causes, where people can recognize those long-term patterns. It's pulling away, seeing the forest from the leaf. And both are important, right? You are the individual being the leaf, understanding what is going on within yourself. And then the forest is obviously the aggregate of a society. So very, very well said on the points that you made, man. And the chemical warfare, the hardware of people is damaged. And that makes it even more difficult for someone to care or generate that willpower. When I have conversations with people, I tell them you have to start from the basics. And you can do that by just, obviously, some mental practices, but focus on your health, your physicality, right? This is the vessel. If you take care of that, then the receiver of the mind and the processor will start to come back on par. People are so far in negative knowledge that they never start. Most of them give up. And with that trauma response, it's so easy to externalize and latch on to a savior like Donald Trump, Jesus Christ, some religious figure. You're abdicating your own responsibility and accountability to do that great work, that internal work, for sure, the magnum opus.
I remember just the other day, it's a great bumper sticker. It says, "I am fully vaccinated by the blood of Jesus Christ." And I thought to myself, I wonder what the Council of Nicaea would have thought of that. If they could see into the future and be like, "Hey, bro, look at this religion that we created by Xing out all of the stuff from it that we didn't like."
That's good. Yeah, man.
And thousands of years later, people are still sucking on it like their mama's teeny. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's another cycle. That there's an uptick in Christianity, and then it's merged with the Republican, the right political party, which is so contradictory if you even have any type of esoteric Christian awareness, right? The core truths that are embedded in these cultural religions. It's the hypocrisy is incredible, and that those are symptoms of mind control, 100%.
And if we're talking about mind control, all right, and this is the other thing, trauma-based mind control, what does that mean? Well, if you look at, say, police training in New Zealand, and I'm pretty sure it's very similar in the militaries and police forces and schools and businesses throughout the rest of the world, they have to do a whole lot of marching, and they don't know why they're doing marching. They just keep getting told, it's so that you can look good when you're on the parade day. And you have to do all of this mindless kind of like legal jargon text work. Put them in all caps. Why do you have to put the names in all caps? Just do it. Right? To the point where the recruits aren't thinking anymore because they can't, because they're so freaking exhausted. That is the key here. The truth movement is freaking exhausting. All right? And I remember Thane Kirby, who ran a very successful radio station here called George FM, he told me that the way that he built it is that you have to celebrate every little victory. All right? Every little time where you have any measure of success, you have to celebrate it and get people on board and make them feel happy about it, because otherwise you lose momentum. You lose that energy that people are actually putting into it. And I noticed that you got an award behind you for the One Great Work Network. And I thought to myself, yeah, we need like a truth movement Oscars or something. Which reminds me, the Oscars themselves, I did a bit of research on this, got corrupted some time ago, so that really, really good movies would not get the recognition they deserve, and really kind of like average movies that just have like a message that they're pushing and stuff like that. We'll get all these things. This is where the term Oscar bait came from. And I'm starting to think that this is very much how our society is working. We are being baited into supporting certain ideas and certain works because they are just telling us that it is good. They're just telling us that that's the best thing to do it, all right? Like, who is the ultimate, like, as in the ultimate anarchist who is really famous and really powerful and really influential in the world? There isn't one. Okay, and that's the thing. Teaching these fundamental principles of not being a slave is so unpopular to the generalized mind-controlled and trauma-based mind-controlled general populace that there isn't going to be a swift end to this regime of global tyranny worldwide, because if the fundamentals are not addressed, the problem is not going to get solved, period. And now we have a million options of how to spend our time, and usually only a couple of ways of making that time worth something that eventually will contribute to the fight in an individual way to end slavery of the collective.
Absolutely, man. When you were talking about truthers, right? Truthers are traumatized from being black-pilled so much and so long. They're looking at the dark aspects of society, and then they're not processing and integrating that, right? Taking what is useful and then applying it to the natural world. When you seek truth, this is why that phrase, seek truth and speak truth, they go together for a reason. It's you're taking in the input and you're internalizing all of this information. Most of the information is that, you know, we've been living a lie and the negative aspects of society, and you have to output that, process it and output that into the Ethernet. And that is a process of integration, and it's also therapeutic. So when I say truthers are traumatized and they're not doing that internal shadow work, this is the type of behavior that they get. They get an imbalance of ego, right? They don't have that healthy ego, and they get into a more like a collectivist groupthink mindset where it's just all about their little cults, you know, belittling or trying to attack other truthers. So we need community. We need unity. There are unifying factors, and absolutely it is, you know, morality and anarchism, 100%. This is foundational of existence. You exist in the world, and being violated is wrong. I mean, let's start there, folks, right? And then, you know, move up from that.
So if that's the case, it means that I realized a couple of years into doing this that people have lived extraordinary lives and have passed on since that, working, trying to get the truth out about something, anything, what their own particular mode is, and that I am humbled because I am walking on the bones that lay before me that have actually laid the foundation for the modern truth movement and its very existence, which is significantly much more populous than it ever has been. It used to be such a cryptic thing that almost nobody anywhere was able to really even get information. You had to go all the way to a library and Dewey Decimal System and like read whole books and things like that in order to get one piece of information that you wanted, because it was that difficult to get a hold of it. And now we've got I like the term influencer, not because I like the term, but because I got called an influencer before I even knew what the term influencer was, right? They create these new languages, and this is how cults work, I think, to a large degree, very effectively, is they confuse people by confusing the meaning of language fundamentally. And that's I think very important. thing to denote as soon as people start using new terms or new words, oh, you don't want to go outside your bubble, and my radar just goes bing, 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 bing. That's mind control right there. And oh my
Yes.
goodness, yeah. Well, I need to take
Yes.
a wiki leak. Will, would you be able to reply to that while I go do so?
Yeah, absolutely,
Go
for
for
sure. WikiLeaks, yeah, you've been saying that for years. I've used it in some of my live shows. It's excellent.
I don't need to use my Assange, so I'll be right back in a flash.
Oh, Vinny, it's excellent, man. Yeah, so responding to that, I mean, in my personal work, this is why I define words and terms. I mean, even in the Socratic method, in a formal debate style, you define your terms and you define your position. I mean, that is fundamental, because with the manipulation of language and words, we need to go back to the origins of the etymology, right? And we can talk about what it means today, but what it actually is, what its origination, vibratory effect of that word, it's important, because as soon as you dilute and distort language, then you have a collapse in communication. And if you can't communicate, people can't comprehend on both sides, the giver of information and the receiver, and you have all-out confusion. And that's just a recipe for, a complete breakdown of any type of society or group of people. Like you were mentioning, Vinny, back in the day, the work that someone would have to put in to even find this occulted information. And then if you came across someone that was a truther seeking the truth as well, there was an automatic kinship there, because you understand the work that is involved. There is that level of comprehension. So taking some steps back and defining our words, our terms, so we can have comprehension and get back to healthy communication, I think is vital in the the quote unquote truth community.
Isn't it a great irony that in the information age, communication is lacking? Right? We can communicate with practically anybody, practically anywhere, practically any time, and yet our ability to put across our ideas and communicate effectively seems to have just gotten worse and worse and worse, to the point now where people are afraid to even open their mouths and tell somebody something, because they are, I don't know what the reason is. Why would you keep that thing to yourself? Is it because you are afraid that it might cause friction? I mean, I hate to break it to you, but we're all gonna die! Alright, there's no room for error here. You have to say these things whenever the opportunity presents itself to you. That's essentially what courage is, and more to the point, other people seeing you do it and do it successfully provides them encouragement. That gives them courage. Courage, like fear, is an infection. Okay? And the enemies of mankind are very, very effective at making that fear infection make everybody freak out and abandon the basic principles that truly bind them together, that grant them self-esteem. That being committing esteemed acts. If you're not willing to put in the work and create something that came from your mind, that you're willing into three-dimensional the universe, and so others can see it, smell it, taste it, touch it, you are fundamentally bankrolling the New World Order with your inaction. You are paving the road for them. People need to understand that. You are standing in their way, and you can either be difficult for them to roll over, or impossible. Okay? Or sometimes you just want to take the easy route out. I've got to tell you, the consequences for taking the easy way out ain't that easy at all. Imagine all the people who, I don't know, would have stuck up for cats during the purging of them in ancient Europe. You know? That's what the Dark Ages were caused by. Fleas on rats that weren't being eaten by cats because cats were the work of the devil and they got exterminated. Okay? That's what's happening nowadays with thoughts. Okay? People are trying to eradicate the very thoughts that would defend you against parasitical organisms like government. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. 100%. You know, it's trending right now, and it's great, you know, the whole parasite detox physically, right? I mean, coming to that awareness that we all have certain levels of parasites in us, and it's good to detox that. Well, I've been talking about this recently in my work, and I do have a presentation coming up where I'm going to dive in about the mental parasites that people hold, right? And that larva of loathing is fear itself that people are feeding, and that is developing into certain schisms or psychoses. And when you were talking, it reminded me of, when you were talking about courage, it reminded me the second half of the Milgram experiment, where they showed that when people observed a person having courage and stopping the experiment of, you know, the perceived electric shock on an innocent person, right? But when they observed someone having courage, then they had courage themselves. It is infectious courage itself, right? It's like on the opposite polarity of you know, the actual mind virus or the mental parasite. So another reason to activate and go public, being scared of what the herd, what the crowd is going to think of you, how they're going to judge you, so you don't speak the truth, or you don't say that thing. That's what the social engineers want. They want your obedience, they want you to tacitly agree, and they also want your silence.
Because silence is consent, is it not? There's a fundamental issue that I have with not doing what I'm told, right? I do like being told to do things. Strangely enough, you know, that might sound strange coming from me, but only under certain circumstances. If somebody knows exactly what they're talking about, I would like them to instruct me so that I would have the ability to do as they are capable of doing. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, if I'm being told what to do by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, who doesn't take responsibility for their actions, and has a delusional self-image that essentially makes them a prism of their own inadequacy that does not reflect light on the inside, all right? If somebody like that is telling me what to do, I'm afraid I'm not going to be receptive, okay? And it has nothing to do with me. It has something to do with you, the person who I have adequately assessed is not worthy of my loyalty or my honor or my help or listening to you. You know, that kind of thing. Those things have to be earned through action. Anybody can say anything. They could watch this and watch that and deliver a few quotes or whatever, but it's the application in real life and these fundamental principles. Now, what's difficult about that is we've been lied to about so much. When I say we, I mean me and probably the bulk of the audience, for our entire lives, about the very fundamentals of how things work and what our responsibilities are while we are alive. Okay, and something you were saying before about parasite cleansers and taking care of your health, your physical body, that kind of thing is not the stage that I'm at yet, right? I've seemed to have felt out and nailed to a large degree most of the philosophical and the technological aspects and things of that nature that we're sort of required to know, but I haven't got my health in order yet. And I'm only just really starting to understand the woeful inadequacy of my lack of personal responsibility on that. And I think that that's a very good place to start, is realizing that you haven't got it all correct, and that's okay. As long as you realize it and you start to do something about it, you don't have to do it all at once. It can just be one bit at a time, because it is a big learning and a big growing process. You're not going to be, I don't know, Christian Bale in The Mechanic and then Arnold Schwarzenegger of Mr. Universe within a day. Okay? It's going to take time and a training regime to be able to fit into the skin that you have in a way that actually is beneficial for you, and being able to understand health, medicine, practicing and all of that. People spend tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars going to institutions to learn that stuff. And I see so many people, they don't even acknowledge that they've got room to learn. They don't even acknowledge that they have something that they should be trying to accomplish. They are simply doing the exact same thing day in, day out, without even so much of the cognizance that what they are doing is hurting themselves, and in so doing, it hurts everybody that they come into contact with their influence.
Well said, man. People are stuck in the feedback loop. And they need to break the habits of being themselves, like, Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza talked about in one of his books. Something that I've noticed, and I would love to get your opinion on this, what you think, Vinny, is, and I've seen this in the truth community, it's this purist mindset. And they attack people because they're not, I'm more anarchist than you. I'm more aligned to natural law than you. I'm a bigger truther than you. And I've seen this for, I would say, the majority of this past year, even longer, that this attack on people because of this religious mindset of purism, where I agree with you. Look, we are all human. I have my goals, my issues, my progression that I am working on, whether it be, mental, emotional, and physical. We're all working on something, and especially in the current climate of the war that we are entrenched in, right? I mean, you have to take it one step at a time, but the point is moving forward and actually taking that step versus having one foot stuck and you're just spinning in that feedback loop where cycles, habits aren't being broke. They're not even being looked at. They're being resisted. And I think a lot of that has to do with, going back to that trauma response, because one of the initial effects of a traumatic experience is the split of the psyche, right? There's a disassociation that happens. It's a defense mechanism where the ego says, okay, this is hurting me. I'm going to put my barrier and my wall up. This is why certain people, when they go through a traumatic experience, they kind of block out or black out certain details of an event. And I think this happens, across the board with humans. And that internal work is breaking down those barriers and looking at those hidden and dark aspects of yourselves to break those patterns and take a step forward on the progression of evolution, human evolution.
Of course, those would say, Will Keller, because of that statement, you're obviously an agent, you're obviously controlled opposition. My trauma is bigger than your trauma, and this is not my real name because I've managed to disassociate from it and not deal with my trauma.
Oh yeah, man. I'll get some messages on that for sure.
One can only hope, Otherwise,
Yeah.
what are message boards for if not for that? I'm getting this a feeling lately that things have gotten worse since I began, not better. I remember when I began YouTube, you could learn anything. Anything in any way, shape or form you used to be able to learn. And then they started changing the rules. And society was changing before these rules changed, right? Like it's kind of like caterpillar tracks, right? When one end of the caterpillar track is off the ground, the very first one is coming on the ground. So the way that it works in terms of social engineering, as far as I'm seeing it with trauma, personality disorders, political opposition, dividing the truth movement, is that these seeds are getting planted, and when they take root, then we start seeing changes, and then once they have fully metastasized to a large degree, I think that's the appropriate analogy, then you see these big fundamental changes that seem to come in very rapidly and seemingly out of nowhere, unless you are actually watching the development of these social cues that are being built up. And I remember somebody else the other day said that I was controlled opposition because I worked with a man named Billy TK who ran like the most successful conspiracy theory platform political party in this nation's history, with almost no lead up, no run up, and very little funding to speak of, and gave people hope, gave people his private number so that they could call him if they were thinking about committing suicide or whatever, because he was a good man, right? And I'm now being tarred with a brush of being controlled opposition because I'm still friends with the guy. Like by people who haven't done any of the work that I myself or Billy TK or to an extent yourself have done to earn our position. There's a reason you know our names. It's because we've done something to earn a reputation. And people who do not have a reputation often employ the tactic of destroying somebody else's in order to make a name for yourself.
That's right. That's externalizing their lack of action as well. And that is extremely prevalent. And it's disheartening as well, right? I mean, the people that talk the most shit to, people that are doing the work are the ones that are doing absolutely nothing, right? They're doing nothing. So they are externalizing their shame and their guilt and being jealous instead of looking at themselves and asking themselves the big questions why they're not getting their ass onto the battlefield of putting out educational material. So yeah, I see that a lot, man, for sure.
And the question is coming down to longevity. All right, and I say this on the show quite a lot. Had one of the producers from Ground Zero Radio talk about tightening your belt as an alternative media entity. All right, that means running on the lowest budget that you possibly can. Why? Because things are going to get harder. And people who have huge amounts of overheads, debts that they're working on, massive big moving machines, huge employed workforces, that they're not going to survive. They're just not going to be around anymore. And this is something that I found very interesting when I got deplatformed. I was New Zealand's number one, I think that the closest person to me in terms of producing content had about maybe 2% of my audience. All right, and that was how big, singularly, I by myself had created the entity of the Vinny Eastwood show to become, and that was simply because I was basically running unopposed. All right, and just nobody else was bothering to do it. I listened to InfoWars, went crazy, as you do, and and started doing the truth work because I thought that I was going to get enslaved and subsequently exterminated by ruthless, criminal, sociopathic scumbaggery, and I didn't have a choice. All right, that was it. I just had motivation because of a lack of options. For some reason, the bulk of New Zealanders for a good 10 years, from the 2008 to 2018 era, which is around about when you heard of me, there was no other alternative media in New Zealand, not really doing video, doing radio, doing web, social media all simultaneously. There weren't any. And once that period of 2018, once censorship began, the big fundamental censorship that we all experienced around about that time began, that's when all the people started to pop up, right? Did you notice that in the States as well? That it wasn't until the censorship began that a lot of people started their shows?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. That was a good sign. I mean, during that time, I thought that was a great sign that was happening. People were taking action. And then the question is, what happened from then to kind of now? And I think, some of these events that have happened and the pandemic being one of them, and modern literacy. This is why I'm a huge advocate of Mark's tech class, right? Because once you start getting censored and deplatformed, then what do you do? Do you have the knowledge and the skill sets to keep your content going, to keep in contact with people, and function in the shadows of the internet and society?
It reminds me of something Stefan Verstappen told me about, that he said that the New World Order is going to win. Right, they're absolutely going to win. They're going to have their totalitarian global police state. You can't necessarily avoid that and stop that from happening in its entirety. But what you can do is you can find out ways of living so that you can live within the cracks of the sidewalk and still survive for a period of time. He reckons it's going to take about 7 years. Now, part of the reason why he thinks this, I believe, is because of the psychopathic mindset. If you had a group of 10 psychopaths, let's say just for the metric of it, who suddenly have no other enemies who could ever stand against them or ever do anything to them or ever take anything from you, do you think those 10 psychopaths are just going to hold hands, sing Kumbaya, that kind of thing? No. They will start to perceive each other as the enemy, and probably correctly so. And what he thinks is going to happen is, yes, we're going to have like 7 years of brutal, totalitarian, global domination, and then these people are going to eat each other like piranhas in a tank without food.
Great point.
Now, it's not entirely dissimilar from how the current truth movement is operating, though. So the question is, who's going to eat each other and kill each other off first, the elite or the truth movement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reflection, like, just looking at society and have it, it's pretty much a reflection of a death cult in every aspect and category. So even those psychopaths, the social engineers, they want that, that mini-me psychopathy to be in the individuals as well. So it's holographic in a sense. And I think that is kind of the heart of mind control and why it can be so effective.
Effective mind control. This is another element as well. Mind control cuts two ways. Number one, Are you teaching somebody something because you want to control their mind, because you want to control what they're thinking? Or are you teaching somebody something so that they can control their mind, so that they can control their thinking, so that neither you nor anybody else could ever be a threat to them in that way again? That's, I think, what we're doing is we're building a intellectual and a moral immune system. I mean, like you were talking about the hologram and like the fractal, like my story about the antioxidants. There's a reason why machines rust, and it's the same reason why people age. They oxidize, okay, because there are these entities called free radicals, and what they do is they find spare electrons and then they steal them. Okay, so you just imagine a normal, healthy cell in your body, just walking along, having a good day, minding his own business, and all of a sudden along comes this free radical, and he comes up to the cell. He's like, "Hey, buddy, wow, you're so beautiful. Oh, you're so talented. I can make you a big star. Oh, I see you've got some spare electrons there. Do you mind if I just snatch them off you?" And this poor little cell, his electrons taken away from him. He's completely out of balance. He's completely reversed homeostasis, or whatever they call it in the hood. And he's lying there in a fetal position. And there's these other entities, though, and they're called antioxidants, the opposite of the free radical, where they find damaged cells and they repair them by giving them their electrons, right? So this antioxidant sees this little cell sitting there in a fetal position and like crying. And he's just like, "Hey buddy, what happened to you?" And the cell's like, "Oh, there was this guy and I thought he was my friend. He said I was going to be a big star, and then he took my electrons." "Oh buddy, it's okay, it's all right." I said, "Look, I've got some spare electrons here. You can have them, all right?" And the little cell's like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, mate." "Oh my god, you just like restored my faith in humanity and everything. How can I ever repay you?" And the antioxidant says, "You'll never have to. From the micro to the macro, from the antioxidant to the activist to the free radical and the psychopath, everything's just a smaller or larger version of something else, and we all have our roles, just like the fundamental agents of the universe have theirs. What is your job, ladies and gentlemen? Is your job to fix the damage that has been done by giving of yourself and restoring balance to the universe in just the small little ways you can? Or are you trying to destroy and suck that which does not belong to you into your sphere of influence at the detriment of all existence?
Exactly. We're striving for a condition of symbiosis, which symbiosis, there's mutualism, where both parties benefit equally. There is parasitic, where only one party benefits at the expense of another, right? And symbiosis itself is harmony. I love the analogy with the free electrons. I'm very much into molecular hydrogen. In fact, I launched a molecular hydrogen business. That's a free radical eliminator, and it generates molecular hydrogen gas, which is the smallest molecule, which neutralizes the most dangerous free radicals, being the hydroxyl radical. And when you look at disease itself, it all stems from inflammation and oxidative stress, being out of balance. And when you are out of balance, you are on that path of involution, of degradation, even in the body perspective of ATP and cellular energy, right? When that those free radicals build up, then the mitochondria suffers as well. You lose energy, and then you are, you're in a defeatist type of mentality because you don't even have the energy in your vessel to activate and take care. So again, those fundamentals, starting where you can, taking care of the body, the mind, the spirit, and moving forward towards symbiosis, right? I ask a question to, like, when I'm talking to people on the street, what do you truly care about? Because most people, the commonalities are, I care about health, wealth. They go on all of this list of naming these, virtuous aspects, right? But yet there's nothing being applied towards that meaning. There is no purpose. Purpose and meaning go hand in hand, right? You understand the injustice of the world. You understand objective morality, natural law. The solution, your purpose, is activating and spreading that message and educating. You are an antioxidant, right? Destroying the free radicals, neutralizing them. It's a great analogy, how you conveyed it. And again, it's fractal, it's holographic. We can learn everything we need to know from the greatest mentor of all, which is nature.
I had this, I'm not sure if you do this, but I have fantasy conversations, right? Where you imagine that somebody comes into your life and a conversation happens in a certain way, and you test yourself as to how I would reply. And I imagined that I was pulled up by a police officer who was very rude. And initially I'm very nice and friendly and jovial. And he asked me what I do, and I say I don't answer questions. He asked me why don't I answer questions, and I say that's a question. And the basic thing that I thought about saying, this key phrase, was the way that you could probably best describe me is somebody who protects the weak and the defenseless from those who would prey upon them. Fundamentally, I think that's the one thing that I truly care about above most, and that's probably because when I was a child, I didn't have somebody like that protecting me as perhaps they should have. And this comes back to full circle things, where the things that happen to you in your formative years, they determine your personality. According to Dr. Bruce Lipton, who we've had on this show before, approximately 96% by the age of 7 of your behaviors, 96% of your behaviors are basically locked in. And you can change gene expression through meditation, like an hour's meditate. I think it was about 4 hours of intense, uninterrupted meditation on one particular aspect is capable of changing 1% of that operating system. All right, 4 hours times 96. If you wanted to reprogram through meditation your entire operating system. Now, the question is, am I doing this out of some misplaced sense of righteousness? Am I mind-controlled by having watched too many movies and things of that nature, with a simplistic understanding to go out and do what I think is right and try and emulate the heroes that exist in fantasy and always have existed in fantasy since the beginning of time, even the legendary tales of Hercules or Agamemnon or shall we say, Alexander the Great to an extent. There are exceptional people throughout the entirety of history for which provide inspiration in an ongoing way, to the point where their deeds carry throughout time. somebody can say something so fundamentally important that people have not only remember it while that person's still alive, but have passed that knowledge on deliberately across thousands of years so that those people who are living today can still benefit from that knowledge, you know. People like Friedrich Bastiat, this great quote, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men living together in society, they create for themselves in the course of time a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Little things like that, those beautiful little nuggets and pearls of wisdom that our betters and our forebears have left for us. What is the obligation upon us when such great fundamental individuals have existed before? I'm like, well, hold on a second. This has inspired me. This has changed the course of my life. This has given me a critical understanding of things which I was previously confused and no longer am rendered inert by the confusion, and now can make active choices and take actions as a result of this ancient knowledge that was passed down, right? That is no small thing. That's very freaking important. And maybe the reason why I want to protect the weak and the defenseless and be seen as formidable by those who would seek to prey on them is the fundamental concept of homage. All right? You want to pay homage. It's maybe, I'm just thinking about it now, Will, maybe this whole journey with the show for the last 17 years and all the work that I've done has been my penance as well as my pilgrimage as well as my pleasure to meet so many interesting and wise and capable and skilled and enlightened individuals such as yourself over the years on the show, that through vicarious viewing of the audience has enriched the lives not only of me but of many, many others, and in the result of some cases have actually saved their lives, changed their lives for the better, and made them better people for it. And in so doing, each and every one of them that gets affected by this show in such a positive way, not everybody does, they are changed. And in that change, the people in their immediate vicinity see that change and have the potential to be inspired themselves. And even people who have met through the show, who just both happened to be listeners and then found out where each other lived, and they were like right next to each other, you know, the whole time, and the show brought them together. There's all these unexpected benefits of caring, or just simply giving enough of an effort so that you do not appear to be demotivated and demoralized by the gargantuan problem, this massive mountain that you're trying to scale. This is how you inspire people. Motivating people, sure, great, go ahead. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in inspiration, so that I don't have to keep motivating people. They become self-motivated, and then they don't need me anymore to do it for them. They become the wellspring of their own destiny.
Beautifully said, Vinny. 100%. And I agree with you. This is how I view this work. You can't force someone to do the internal work. Sure, we're educators, influencers, right? You're influencing someone to look within, but most of all, it's the inspiration. Because when you inspire someone, they are breathing in to inspire and also inflaming in the heart. It activates a flame that they are activating within themselves, but you are that inspiration. So I have a quote, no leaders, more artists. And that's what we are. We are creating art right now, activating that creative essence of communicating, public presenting. All of this is in the category of art itself. Art is the effect of divine creation. the creative intelligence that's interconnected with us all and all of life. So, by serving the truth, you serve others and you serve yourself. I believe, I use this word believe because I am pretty confident the only thing we take with us upon death, right, the transmigration of spirit and soul, is our moral right action, is our morality itself. That goes to many mythos in many cultures. You can look at Cometian with Ma'at, with the heart and the feather on the scales upon death, right? She's going to weigh your morality or lack thereof, because morality is honoring the divine creative intelligence. It's honoring truth itself, that interconnectedness. And that is the one great work right there.
The chicken connectedness.
Yes.
I love chickens. They're like my spirit animal. I heard.
They're fantastic.
Just over the hill, we've got a group of wild chickens that roam in the suburb of Titirangi, which is a very foresty sort of suburb. So they've got plenty of places to hide and roost, and they look real healthy, and they're having fun. The chooks do. And one day, when the chickens have the threat response, right, and the threat response carries like an echo through the flock. The first chicken will go, "Baka!" And then the next chicken will go, "Baka!" And then the next chicken will go, "Baka!" And then all of a sudden they're all going, And I was out on the on the porch one morning and hearing this happen, like just a huge amount of them. And I was like, my God. Going absolutely bagurk. And this other time I think I got really high one morning. I don't know why, and I come out on the porch again, and the toto trees that we have here, where we make honey from. Sorry, manuka. And it was covered in all these beautiful white flowers, and the bees were going absolutely crazy for it. They're seriously, like, right in front of my face. Must have been 1,000 bees all over this big tree, sucking up all the nectar. And I was really high, and I was like, "Whoa, that's buzzy." and they absolutely were. And I was just thinking about this, the sort of like methods for life. It really comes down to the morning routine. And when you were talking about inspiration and the fundamentals of this, it made me want to ask the question, Will, what is your morning routine?
Excellent question. I think the morning is obviously the microcosm of life and death, right? The sun sets, the sleep process, death itself, and then you were reborn in the morning. So what you do in the morning absolutely sets the pace for the day. And again, I start with the fundamentals. My whole spiritual practice is really based upon the elements of earth, water, air, and fire. Wake up in the morning, I take deep breaths, I pound, a big old glass of hydrogen-rich water, go outside, I get the sun on my face if it's out. If it's not, I still go outside, get some fresh air, get my feet upon the earth, and move my bodies. I wouldn't say I practice Qigong. I do an assimilation of Qigong. It's just body movement. And I have pretty much an animal sanctuary, so I take my animals out, and then I hit my whiteboard. I write down my daily goals, or just run through them if they're already written, and plan out my day. And being a single father, there's a lot of time during the day, especially we're unschooling, so my daughter and I get into some type of activity during the day, and then come and go back to editing.
Oh, we seem to have lost you there. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. This is my other adopted friend, the feral cat. She hit the mute button. Yes.
Will, don't tell people this.
Yes. It's interesting. Yeah, every day is different for sure. And what I was saying before I got muted was I don't have a set structure every day, but I do have the fundamentals that remain constants, and that is my elemental practices and the fatherly interactions that I have with my daughter, and of course, the time that I have doing content creation. So, I think obviously those basics in the morning, even an inventory of mental, emotional, and physical is important to stick to those fundamentals and go through them. It's really easy to break a habit. It's really hard to create a habit. So it's important to have some type of structure and vigilance when it comes to your practices.
It reminds me of, what was it? Inside the Actors Studio. I think he was interviewing Samuel L. Jackson, and he was talking about auditions. And for actors, auditions can be very stressful because you are coming in there and you are competing against a number of other people. And Jackson noticed the difference between the good actors in the waiting room and the ones who are not going to get the part. And he said the fundamental difference is this: the bad actor who's not going to get the part will be sitting there spending that time while they're waiting for their audition trying to memorize the lines over and over again, trying to read them back and get them into a sort of structure, which is a stressful thing. And the good actors do not have the script. They're just sitting there focusing on getting themselves into a good headspace. And that's what I do with my mornings. I fundamentally get up and convince myself that today is going to be a good day. Look, I've had some nice coffee, I've had some nice breakfast, I've gotten some fresh air, I've stood on the ground, and whilst I'm doing that, I am making my list for the day. And then throughout the day, I will knock off pretty much everything on that list, even though I didn't have a list in the day to begin with. Mm-hmm. And this way, every day starts in a nice way that is conducive for productivity, and whatever your productivity is. And even some cases on that list is relax, because
yes.
People put too much freaking pressure on themselves, Will. They grind themselves into the ground, and they don't care of their heart, They don't care how they're feeling. They think that how they feel is secondary. When somebody says, "Oh, I've had a bad day," and you're going, "Oh, what happened?" and they're like, "Oh, nah, it's too difficult to explain." It's like, no, it's not. You're just trying to palm off like your problems don't matter because you've tried to tell people about your problems many, many times before to the wrong people who just don't care about you very much. I'm not one of those people. You can explain this to me, and I will listen to what you've said and reply to what you've said. Okay? This is the thing. Having care for other people is very, very difficult to manifest if there isn't first care for yourself.
Absolutely, man. That goes right to the first principle of natural law and the Hermetic principles, mentalism. Everything originates from that state of mind. So that is absolutely vital. And, another thing it brings up too, because we've been talking a lot about kind of the truth community, is having those communities or circles of like-minded individuals where we can confide in and connect with. A lot of the truth community is, it's based online. Sure, you can find local gatherings and stuff, which are great, but having that connection, I look at it as a node. Right, a node is an off section. If you look at a tree, you clip a branch at its node, then that branch you could soak, it'll grow roots and become a whole new tree again. Like, this is what we need. We need these communities and circles, but of course, those moral and ethical principles are the foundation of these groups. And I see a lot of that kind of lacking. I've been lucky and blessed in that aspect to have my circle where I can fully open up and connect with. And that group itself has taken action to create, the Funnel Conference. And so having these communities, it is a place to commune for that unity, and having that state of mind and that emotional stability is vital.
Mm-hmm. And as my wonderful mod DK always says, much love, no fear. And I was quizzing him on this. What does much love, no fear mean? Does it mean that I shouldn't be afraid of things? That I should never be afraid of death or any of those elements that are actually terrifying, things I'm not knowingly prepared for, and have an overabundance of love for other people who are going through such stuff? Because I see myself as kind of like a protracted grief counselor to a large degree. Well, that's what this job is just talking to traumatized people about stuff that they got traumatized by and then subsequently have gotten over. And it takes somebody who actually is listening to them and cares about what they say to be able to guide the conversation through, so that somebody who is a passive listener will be able to identify that they themselves have suffered similar wounds to this person that we're talking to, who has gotten over them and found their own way back to health, the road of the wounded healer. Will, thank you so much for your time today. WillKeller.com is his website, WillKeller.com. Baby, thank you very much for your time, brother.
I appreciate all the work you're doing, Vinny. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all the viewers.
I sure hope you don't appreciate all of it, because some of it's just, well, it's awful, really.
the chat. Again, it's one of those things where you gotta pick and choose, and I can't see the chat anyways. But it's just you and me here, and the chicken.
You know what? I have totally been neglecting the chat the whole time. Oh my gosh, I got somebody actually calling the freaking phone on right now.
Someone from the chat.
I don't know, maybe somebody doing the chat. Anyway, we're live on radio right now, and mandatory myocarditis is in the chat room. Says Vinny, the conspiracy therapist.
That's good.
And VJM Publishing, he says he enjoyed the reference to Hermeticism, and he says we need to do a CPTSD episode, Vinny. I was like, that doesn't sound like a very bad idea at all. CPTSD. I think everybody in the frickin' movement is suffering from that to some degree or another, don't you think? Right. Yeah. CPTSD. Oh my goodness, baby. Thank you everybody for joining in the chat today, and if you do like what we do here on the Vinny Eastwood Show, please go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood like go ahead. Make my news. And go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, you can make a donation if you will. This is the whole idea behind the peer-to-peer economy, is that I'll take all the risk, and put all this stuff out for you for free in the vain and vague hope that it is of such benefit to you that you are willing to put action into making sure that this broadcast continues, just by helping us to pay the very, very meager costs of the show in terms of production. I think I do the work of about between 8 and 13 people during any given show, right? Normally there would be whole teams of people working away and doing all of these things, but over time I've figured out very efficient methodologies to be able to do these myself without having those overhead costs and grand dependency, right? This is independence media in a very literal sense of the word, and you can become a Patreon, ladies and gentlemen, for free. And every time we're putting up archives, Patreon actually will send you an email of them, so you don't have to just glance across it on social media. If people listen to this show for decades, well, it's going to be decades. Man, I can't wait till the show's like 20 years old or something like that. And they'll still have to wait for you to be able to buy the show a drink in the United States. But I've just been working for so long with so many people in so many ways, and it has made huge impact in people's lives, and I would like it if people would help me to continue to do that work. That is my request of you. If you have experienced this show and the joyous nature of it, and its sheer awesomeness, then please go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and click donate. Also, I'd like to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, holdenhealthcare.com. David Holden, who's a nutritional biochemist and a naturopathic oncologist specializing in hard to treat cases, of which I was one. You know, he comes in and goes, I've got a scan of your liver, Vinny. The liver is classified from 1 to 3. 1 meaning green, it's very, very good. 3 meaning red, and it's very, very bad. Your liver, Vinny, is a 9. I was like, whoa. So you have those little fundamental things that happen in your life. Okay, he told me you've got to change or you're going to die. And that is the choice we all have in every element of our life, every minute that we are alive. We can change because of the things that have happened to us. We can change because of the things that we have experienced, or we can succumb to entropy. Don't succumb, ladies and gentlemen. Don't give in, no matter how dark things get. There is always something much, much worse around the corner. It's far darker by comparison, and that should encourage you, right? You might think it's ironic that things are really bad now and they're going to get worse is an encouraging sign. Yes, it is, because in bad times there is a need for people like you, ladies and gentlemen. I've spoken to countless listeners of this show, and one of my listeners told me that important people listen to your show, Vinny. A world-famous guitarist saw my interview with him and actually flew to New Zealand to have a jam with this particular guest on the show, right? And that's what he told me, is that important people listen to your show, Vinny. And I didn't actually know exactly what that meant until I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, when I had the realization of all the listeners and all the guests and all the people that I've actually interacted with through the course of doing this work. You are important. You're intelligent. You've got skills. You're capable. You're inspiring. You lead people to be better. That is not something that you should just assume, okay? You people are amazing in so many different ways, and you're so unique in the journeys that you've been on and the things that you have learned and the things that you've done. And the will to survive, the will to be good and continue being good, even when the benefits of being bad are waved in front of you. You said the forgotten word, no, and you did the right thing anyway. That is what makes you important. That's what makes the human race worth saving. So if you're ever in doubt, if you're ever in fear, if you ever hear one of Vinny Eastwood's jokes that's just like, man, I can't do this anymore. You know, just remember who you are, what you've been through, and that you are important and that you are loved. And if that's too much, there's the Vinny Eastwood 30-second meditation. Close your eyes. Where am I? I'm right here. What time is it? It's right now. Is there a threat coming to kill me in the next 60 seconds? Quickly take a look around. Close your eyes again. Nope. Take a deep breath. Open your eyes, and you're back in reality. It's all that fear and anxiety is all the things that have not happened yet and may never happen. And if it ain't here, and if it ain't now, stop worrying about it. Thanks, Will. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, brother.
Last words? Will, perhaps?
Oh, no, it's great to be on, Vinny, so thank you so much. I appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you next time on the Vinny Eastwood Show.com.
Gentlemen, I've brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem.
Yeah, I've been speaking with Jacinda Ardern that we need to eliminate the threat of Vinny Eastwood.
Why do you say Vinny Eastwood when it's clearly Winnie Eastwood? The Vinny Eastwood Show, live Saturday and Sunday at 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Ground Zero Plus.